The corridor of the private wing at St. Jude's is a landscape of white tiles and hushed whispers, but room 402 is where the air starts to change. It's where the hospital ends and something entirely different begins. My name is Elena, and for 10 years, I've been the perfect nurse, the one who never flinches, never breaks decorum, and never, ever looks at a patient as more than a chart. But then came Isabella Sterling. She arrived 2 weeks ago, and since then, the hospital has felt less like a place of healing and more like a stage for a play I'm not sure I'm ready to act in. As I push the heavy, soundproof door open for the midnight checkup, the first thing that hits me is the scent. Hospitals usually smell of chlorine, latex, and the sharp, biting edge of antiseptic that promises safety. But Isabella's room smells of jasmine and a dark, expensive sandalwood that clings to the silk sheets she insisted on bringing from home. It's an intoxicating contrast that makes my skin prickle under my starched white scrubs. The room is bathed in the soft, ethereal blue glow of the moonlight filtering through the sheer curtains, but the shadows it casts are long and jagged. I stand at the threshold for a second too long, my heart performing a nervous, rhythmic flutter that no medical training could ever diagnose. I hear the snap of my latex gloves as I pull them on, a sharp clinical sound that should ground me in my role, but tonight, it sounds like a warning. Isabella is sitting up, her blonde hair spilling over her shoulders like molten silk, her eyes already finding mine in the darkness. She doesn't look like someone who needs care, she looks like a predator waiting in a bed of white linen. The silence is suffocating, filled with the electronic chirp of the heart monitor that seems to be mirroring my own internal chaos. I move toward her, the sound of my rubber soles on the floor the only thing anchoring me to reality. Isabella doesn't look away. Her gaze is a physical weight, tracing the line of my neck, the fit of my uniform, pulling me into her orbit with the terrifying gravity of a star. I set the tray down on the nightstand, my fingers trembling just enough for the glass vial to clink against the metal. It's a tiny sound, but in this room, it feels like an explosion. I lean over to check her fore-drip, and the warmth radiating from her body hits me like a physical force. Our faces are inches apart, the blue light catching the amber flecks in her eyes, and for a terrifying second, the professional wall I've spent a decade building feels like it's made of paper. I realize then, with a jolt that nearly makes me drop my chart, that the real threat in room 402 isn't her surgery or a sudden fever. I realize, with a heavy, sinking feeling in my gut, that the danger isn't medical, it's personal. The routine is supposed to be my shield, a sequence of learned behaviors that keep the world at a distance. But with Isabella, the routine has become a bridge. Every movement I make is a masterclass in suppressed passion, a slow-burn torture that I am both inflicting and enduring. I reach for her wrist, my fingers finding the delicate pale skin where her pulse should be steady and rhythmic. Instead, the beat I find is frantic, a wild, trapped thing that thrums against my fingertips with a desperate intensity. I shouldn't linger. I should count to 60 and move on. But the silk of her sleeve is soft against my forearm, and the heat of her skin is a siren song that I am powerless to ignore. I can feel her eyes on me, tracing the concentration on my face, looking for the cracks in my clinical mask. "Is something wrong, Elena?" she asks, her voice a low melodic rasp that vibrates in the small space between us. I don't answer. I can't. I reach for my stethoscope, the cold metal feeling like a brand against my palm. I move closer, the scent of her jasmine becoming an overwhelming cloud that makes my head swim. I press the diaphragm of the stethoscope against the thin silk of her gown, right over her heart. The sound in my ears is deafening, a heavy rhythmic drum that tells the story of a desire she isn't even trying to hide. I am so close now that I can feel the warmth of her breath against my cheek, a soft, humid caress that makes the air in my lungs feel like lead. My hand is steady, but inside, I am a storm of conflicting impulses. I move the stethoscope, my knuckles brushing against the swell of her chest, a contact so brief and so accidental that it should be meaningless. But Isabella hitches her breath, a small jagged sound that shatters the silence of the room. The heart monitor accelerates, its electronic chirp becoming a frantic warning of the fire brewing in the dark. I am the one with the medical degree, the one in the white uniform, the one who is supposed to be in charge of this interaction. But as she leans back against the pillows, her gaze never leaving mine, her eyes dark with a hunger that mirrors my own, I am forced to confront the truth. I look at her, my hand still resting inches from her heart, and I find myself wondering, in this room with the moonlight and the jasmine and the heavy humid weight of the unspoken, who is really in control of the room? If you are feeling the tension between them, please leave a like and subscribe to Meeting Her. Tell me in the comments, which city are you watching this story from? The storm hits at midnight, a sudden violent outburst of wind and rain that makes the windows of the clinic rattle in their frames like they're trying to escape. The power flickers once, twice, a warning of the chaos to come, and then the room is plunged into a deep, heavy shadow. The main generators are supposed to kick in instantly, but for a long, agonizing minute, the only light is the dim, ominous red glow of the emergency lamps. I am in the middle of changing the dressing on her shoulder, my hands already deep in her personal space, when the darkness swallows us. The red light casts long, distorted shadows across the walls, turning the luxury suite into a cavern of secrets and heat. Isabella doesn't move. She doesn't gasp. She simply waits. The forced proximity is no longer a choice, it is a destiny. I am pressed against the side of her bed, my body leaning over hers, the smell of her jasmine mixing with the ozone of the storm outside. "Elena," she whispers, and the way she says my name, without the title, without the distance, just a raw, vulnerable confession, makes the floor feel like it's shifting beneath my feet. I can feel her hand finding mine in the dark, her fingers interlocking with mine with a possessive strength that I didn't think she possessed. Her skin is burning, but it's not the heat of an infection, it's the heat of a soul that has been starving in the dark. I should pull away. I should go find a flashlight, check the other patients, do my job. But the weight of her touch is a gravity I cannot escape. I lean in, my forehead pressing against hers, our breathing synchronized in the small red-lit space. The silence is no longer sterile, it is a greenhouse for a romance that shouldn't exist, a slow-burn torture that has reached its boiling point. The rain lashes against the glass, a rhythmic accompaniment to the chaos of my own pulse, as the distance between us finally vanishes. I can feel the silk of her gown under my palms, the curve of her waist as she pulls me closer, her touch a searing brand on my skin. The professional mask I've worn for a decade doesn't just crack, it shatters into 1,000 jagged pieces, leaving me exposed and raw in the ruins of my own restraint. I look at her, her eyes reflecting the crimson glow of the emergency lights, and I realize that there is no turning back. In this moment, with the storm howling outside and the heat consuming us within, the professional mask finally shatters, and the woman beneath it is finally, terrifyingly free. The aftermath of the collision is a landscape of heat and jasmine, a world where the only thing that matters is the weight of her body against mine. The power has returned, but we don't move. The bright, clinical lights of the room are a harsh contrast to the crimson intimacy we just shared, but they cannot erase the truth of what has happened between us. Isabella is looking at me with a gaze that is raw, vulnerable, and unmistakably triumphant. The powerful CEO, the woman who commands boardrooms and millions, is now a woman who is completely, beautifully undone by a nurse's touch. I am still sitting on the edge of the bed, my hand resting on the small of her back, feeling the way her skin hums under my fingertips. The scent of her, that jasmine and sandalwood, is no longer a distant fragrance, it is a part of me now, a mark of the secret we now share. "You're a dangerous woman, Elena," she murmurs, her voice a soft caress that makes the hair on my arms stand up. I find myself smiling, a small, bold gesture that feels like a rebellion. The roles have shifted. I am no longer just the caretaker, I am the keeper of her secrets, the woman who saw the fire beneath the ice and lived to tell the tale. The room is quiet now, the storm outside subsiding into a gentle patter against the glass, but the air inside is still thick with the residue of our passion. Every breath I take feels like I am inhaling her essence, a slow-motion intoxication that I never want to end. I reach out to trace the line of her collarbone, my fingers moving with a new, confident grace. There is a weight to our secret, a heavy, delicious pressure that binds us together in a way that no contract or policy ever could. I look at her, the way the light catches the gold in her hair, the way her lips are slightly parted as she watches me, and the hunger returns, sharper and more demanding than before. We are trapped in a cycle of desire, a loop of longing that has redefined the boundaries of my world. The hospital, the charts, the other patients, they are all shadows now, pale imitations of the reality that exists in room 402. I lean in, my face inches from hers, the anticipation of physical weight that demands a resolution. I can see the amber flecks in her eyes dancing with a new light, a fire that I started and only I can put out. I wait, the silence between us pregnant with the promise of more, as we hover in a moment of intense, face-to-face physical anticipation. The morning sun is a cold clinical light that reflects off the white tiles of the hallway, demanding that the world return to its proper order. But as I walk toward room 402 for the morning shift, I know that the world I knew is gone. The starched white of my scrubs feels like a costume now, a mask I am forced to wear while my body still hums with the memory of her touch. I push the door open, and the scent of jasmine greets me like a homecoming. Isabella is sitting up, her laptop open on her knees, her blonde hair perfectly styled, the mask of the powerful CEO firmly back in place. To anyone else, she looks like a patient recovering with remarkable speed. But as I move toward the bed, our eyes meet, and for a split second, the mask slips. I see the heat, the secret, the shared fever that still burns in the depths of her gaze. I reach for her wrist to check her pulse, a gesture we've performed 100 times. But this time, her fingers interlock with mine under the cover of the silk sheets, a possessive grounding touch that tells me she isn't planning on letting go. The power dynamic has shifted forever. I am no longer just her nurse, and she is no longer just my patient. We are something else entirely, something for which there are no charts or protocols. The loop has begun, a cycle of professional distance during the day and a desperate secret hunger during the night. We will play the game, we will exchange orders and medical data, but the air between us will always be charged with the memory of the storm. I am a part of her world now, a secret kept in the heart of the Sterling Empire, and she is the only cure for the fever she gave me. Every step I take through the sterile hallways of the clinic is a lie, because the only thing that is real is the scent of her sandalwood on my skin and the promise of the next midnight checkup. We are trapped in this dance, a beautiful, forbidden cycle that I never want to escape. I look back at her as I leave the room, seeing her watching me with a gaze that is both a threat and a promise. The day has returned, but in room 402, the night is never truly over. The power has changed hands, and I realize that I am not just her nurse anymore, I'm the only one who truly knows her. This was only the beginning. If you missed the other stories on the channel, click on the video appearing on your screen right now. And get ready, because the next meeting will be even more intense. See you soon.